INC Radio at INC Radio YouTube channel sa Marso 8, Linggo, alas 7 ng gabi.
Following the tremendous success of INC Radio Awards Luzon region last February, our next stop is US, Canada, and Latin America. Who will once again be recognized as the best? On April 19th, 2026 at the Fox Theater Pomona, Orange County, California. You'll want to be there when it happens.
This is INC Radio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Don't underestimate
the power
of a single
conversation.
It could change your whole life.
INC Radio Chatline.
conversations that matter.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to INC Radio Chatline. And today, myself and EJ are going to be talking about if friendships expire. Has it met the expiration date? I don't know. We're going to talk about that today. What are your thoughts? Those who are tuning in with us there in the live chat, we will try our best to read them throughout the show because I feel like this topic, I see it everywhere on social media, the whole will they or won't they? Like, is it still going to be a friendship? Is it not still going to be a friendship? You see, I feel like there's so many buzzwords, EJ. There's buzzwords about there's cutoff culture, there's, setting boundaries, and there's all this language. Sometimes it can get overwhelming. And we're just talking about friendships.
I mean, I have very strong thoughts about
very strong thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, I have strong emotions on
okay.
The setting boundaries thing, because I do think it's important, but I think there's a point where we've overdone that. But I mean in social media, where I think it's been over, okay, this is too much.
Got it. Okay. Well, with social media, there's a lot of things out there that can influence us, right? But at this time, we're trying to have a conversation of what it's like as a Christian to kind of deal with these friendships, right? So at your age now, we don't have to do age reveals. We won't today. We'll just say that we are older than we were a year ago, which is true. And how has friendship changed for you as you've gotten older, the way that you've noticed? And for those in the live chat, please feel free to comment. Again, we don't have to comment your name, but let us know, how has friendship changed for you? What are things that you've struggled with? What are things that you've noticed about your friendships that make it difficult or more positive? What are things that you guys go through?
For me, something that I noticed that changed from me from when before, when I was a younger man.
A younger man.
Yeah, something I noticed when I was younger is that I try to make friends with everyone, and oh, it's not friendly anymore. No, it's not it. Yeah. It's not it. I noticed that I'm more selective with my friends, with and by that I mean it's not I deny friendship requests, or if I see someone interested in being friends with me, I'm not that a person to say no, no, I don't want to be friends with you. No, it's not like that. It's if I see someone is genuinely interested in being friends, I still do kind of reciprocate that. But for
Okay.
me, it's like it's what I put effort on. Like it's like, let's say if someone like really, what's the word? The vibe is not really the word that I'm like looking for, but in terms
There's
of,
connection. There's a good
yeah,
connection.
yeah, like
Okay.
the values are kind of like similar. The way
Mhm.
you think is like similar. Like that's how kind of I determine now who I who or what like I put effort like into like really befriending. It's like it's not like before where I would like kind of run myself like ragged trying to
Mhm.
please everyone, trying to meet
Yeah.
like everyone's expectation of me, like trying to fit how they see me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that gets tiring. That gets tiring. That for me, I think now it's like, well, this is who kind of like who I am. So
Okay.
if it doesn't like if the wavelength is different, that's okay. We can still be friends. It's just like it's not as close. Kind of like how when you're a kid, everyone's your best friend. And as you get
Yeah,
older,
that's
once you're
true.
you know, I think for me, I've developed a stage in between friends and best friends where it's like, or well, I have a stage in the middle where it's like you have close friends, and then
Mm.
lesser than friends is like you have like friends with like quotation marks, where it's like they're closer to acquaintances, but you still like you recognize the face every time like when you see them.
Well, this
Yeah.
is like my thing with different friendships now. I feel like as I've gotten older, you have friends for different things. Like you have
Mhm.
friends that your connection is built on something specific.
Mhm.
It could be like, you're closer to somebody at work than you are with the rest of your coworkers, and that's like your work buddy, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
versus your workout buddy that's the thing that you guys do and you really enjoy that, but it's just kind of around that thing. And then you have your circle where these are people who probably know a little bit more about your life, what's going on with you. Maybe they know your family and stuff like that. So I feel like there's different tiers, different purposes, and to me it doesn't make any of the friendships lesser. It's just how we kind of find each other and connect in that way. That's something I feel like that has changed more as I got older, because like what you said, when you're younger and you're surrounded with all these people, it's just really easy to be everybody's friend because you're all going through the same thing. But then as you
Mhm.
get older, it requires a lot more effort to
Yeah,
be able
because
to
you're
keep
not
up
in
with
the
them.
same space, and it's not
Yeah.
like in school where you're stuck in the same space anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
have different experiences throughout the day. Like
Yep.
you have different jobs. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you would, yeah, with like you said, your gym buddy. Like you both have different jobs. Like they're not gonna be able to relate with like, let's say you do office work and they do kind of like manual labor. Like they're not
Yeah.
gonna be able to relate to
I
what
mean,
you
you
do.
can definitely ask each other about what you both do, but yeah, exactly. You can't really relate in that way. And I feel like friendships that kind of thrive, it's because you have something that you connect on, whether it could be values, it could be, stuff that you're interested in, some kind of common ground. Not all the time, of course, but
Mhm. So they think like, because when you said it, I'm like noticing it now for me. Like when you're sort of like uh younger, you kind of try to fit all of that into like one thing, like because
Mhm.
even as a kid, you all have like different experiences as well. Like maybe you have different classes and different stuff. Like where, like yes, for the most part it's similar, but you still have like different interests, like in
Yeah.
stuff. But in your like in my mind, it was just like you're my friend, so you have to be interested in this thing I'm interested in. If we only match 99%, then that's 1%
Yeah.
that like we can't agree on. So are we still friends?
Yeah.
when you're
Like,
when
oh
you're an
no,
adult,
that
yeah,
crisis.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you have that crisis. Like, can we still be friends because we don't agree on this one thing?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, as an adult, you kind of just like, you learn how to agree to disagree sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel like a part of that is because, like what we mentioned earlier, that it requires more of your time
Mhm.
when it comes to, because like for like there's natural things that bring family together, whether it's dinners or just family events. I'm not married, but like for husband and wife, you're just with each other almost, all the time, except for work. You know what I mean? So, with friendships, you really have to go out of your way. So being able to make the effort, I feel like it's really easy to kind of have those fallouts if you don't like put in the work, or if, sometimes it can lead to misunderstandings or different things of that nature. But, speaking towards that idea of fallout, because that's really what we're talking about today, right? Is that idea of friendships expiring. How does that happen? Like, what do you do? How do you handle yourself? Like, have you experienced that, EJ, fallout? And like, what were you feeling at the time? How did you handle yourself? And those in the live chat, feel free to share as well.
Yeah, I've experienced fallouts where it was because of like a fight. Like I've experienced fallouts where it was just sort of we just stopped talking. Because I had a gaming group back in like early 2010s when I was still yeah when I was still in school. I did not have adult responsibilities. Like I could just spend all my time like playing like online video games. Now I can't because like you get called on to do a lot of things, so it's not ideal. If you can't pause the game, it's not ideal. So like before I had like a gaming group where we were from like different walks of life, but we just kind of bonded over like this video game that we all enjoyed. But like at some point we just like, I considered them my friends, but at some point we just kind of like stopped like talking. And there were fallouts that happened because like I could see that they didn't get along with like my siblings, with my brothers. And like for me, like I had to choose, like of course I have to choose my brothers like first. So it just sort of like I just stopped talking to them like less and less. Like we were friends for like a whole school year, I would say, but like the beginning of like the second school year, that was kind of just like when that fallout like sort of like happened. And it's weird because when you're both in the same class, like you still kind of like see each other, and everyone kind of knows you as like your best friends. Your best friends. You like in like the first year, and like by the second year, you're
like, oh, you guys aren't friends anymore.
Like and I'm telling you, this happened in high school, so you can just imagine how like when you're in high school feels like everything.
Yeah.
But when you get older, you realize these things that it's not, it wasn't like the end of the world. That you're not friends with like you're not friends with them anymore. Because sometimes you just have those those non-negotiables, right? Like for me, my non-negotiable was like, well, if you can't get along with like my family, then like I don't know how long we can be friends.
Okay. So when you were going through those, I mean, let me read Tracy's comment real quick, because for her, she said she's never experienced a fallout, because in the sense of a fallout for her, it's meaning that the friendship is broken in that way. And she said that friendships for her don't necessarily expire, more like they vary in intensity based on proximity, contact, and context. So context would kind of be like, how are you connecting? Are you connecting through, what's the social connection? Is it through work? Is it through school, maybe like through college, high school, anything social, like,
I mean, yeah, I get that. Because like you would say, like it's different from like, let's say your best friend you grew up with. That's different from like your work friend, where after you leave that job, like I mean, if you want to keep up, like keep in contact with them, like sure, like at that point they're not your work friend anymore. They're just your friend.
Yeah.
If they're just your work friend, then after you leave the job, like you kind of just like lose contact with them. Like I kind of see that. I kind of see what Tracy's talking about, and that's an interesting, like, what do you call it? Interesting way of like looking at it. Because like for me, fallouts also includes just losing
like fading
contact.
out,
Like I saw that.
Fade out.
That's also in a way a fallout, but I guess you can also look at it as it's not a fallout because the friendship's not over. Like you still
Mm.
have a chance to like reconnect with them, right?
Well, that's kind of the point that I was going to get at some point during this discussion, because my perspective in terms of the word expire, I do agree with Tracy to a point that, and even with what you were saying in terms of conflict, like even if there's
Mhm.
conflict, I always try to leave the door open, because in the sense that things happen, of course, misunderstandings happen, and sometimes you might not always see things the same way, but you would be surprised with time and space how
Mhm.
people will change and how their perspectives change, and that issue that you may have had in that moment may be revisited, and you could actually salvage the friendship like years later. But that can't happen if you don't allow that door to still be open, as opposed to just like cutting them off, like, no, never, never again. But just
Uh,
be like,
yeah, it's like it's leaving the door open, and also sometimes you need that space, right,
mhm,
to grow. Like for me, like there were definitely, like looking back, there were definitely like friendships that I wasn't mature enough to be part of, that
mm.
that friendship, because
Why do you say that?
I was stressing them out so much. I was stressing them out like so much
Mm.
with and I admit this myself. I was like really immature at the time, where if they didn't pay attention to me, like I immediately would and in Tagalog the word we use is tampal, but sulk.
Ah, okay.
Sulk, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I would sulk, like where I wouldn't even communicate it. I would just
Mm.
no, I don't want to hang out. No, I'm good. I'm good. You guys can go hang out. Like I'm good. I'm tired. I don't. Where it's like instead of communicating to them that like I felt like now I would say I feel left out when you guys didn't mention to me that we had this plan, or like you mentioned it to me last minute. Like I feel like left out. That should have been
Mm.
what I said, but instead back then I would sulk. Like I would sulk. I would just avoid them, and it like that's what I'm saying. That where I wasn't mature enough for like the friendship, and I was stressing them out so much from that. So like what happened? Like we had that fallout where I wasn't like wasn't talking to like any of them. Like it wasn't part of the friend group, but
Mm.
when we reconnected like years afterwards, like this like it didn't feel as strained like anymore being part of like that friend group.
Did
you know
you reach out or did they reach out? How did the
we
reconnect
just
happen?
reached out like
Oh, really?
accidentally, where it's like I reached out to them because someone was asking me like like do you know this person? And I was like, yeah, like I know, like I know who that is. Like I haven't talked to them in a while, but I know who that is. And they're like, well,
Mm.
can you contact them for me? And
Oh,
that's how I kind of
really?
reconnected. It was like
Oh.
because of like another person asking me to contact them. Like that's how I reconnected, and
Oh, wow.
like it just kind of got to like talking again, and we kind of just ended up like talking about like the past, and uh, being able to finally mature enough to admit that yeah, like I did like I did stress you guys out a lot. And it wasn't like admitting that it wasn't fair for me to do that to them. And like looking back now, that was like that's what I'm talking about, where it was necessary for me
The
to
space.
to have that space to kind of like grow apart from them. Because when I was with them, like not that I'm saying that that they were the reason I stagnated, but because it wasn't challenging me to
Mm.
grow like as a person. Like I was content where I was at, just pushing for like what I wanted. But like having that space where I had to grow. Like I had to
Mhm.
mature. I had to experience like, oh, this is what it was like.
Yes.
This is what it was like. This is what I was doing to them. Like having those experiences, like it led me to mature enough for that friendship. And like that's something I realized, that when I matured enough for that friendship came back, you know.
Yeah.
And it felt less strained, you know. I'm able to communicate it clearly now, and like it felt a whole lot better than before, you know.
I've always tried to remind myself that relationships are two-way streets.
Mhm.
It's really easy to kind of get into that mindset of looking at what the other person's doing because that's what you're seeing happen. But then that's very humble of you, EJ, to kind of be able to recognize that your part in what was making the friendship difficult. Because I'm sure on their end they also had things that they probably could have improved on too. But you know, with friendships specifically, I won't speak on any other kind of relationship, but as far as friendships go, it is a two-way street. And being able to kind of have that step back and realizing the way that we impact other people without even realizing it, which is why sometimes those fallouts can happen. And not just looking at the other side, like don't just immediately like think like, oh, it's because you did this, but like are you looking at yourself too and holding yourself accountable to your role in that friendship. That's why I'm a big proponent of saying of leaving the door open to for exactly the example that you gave, because I've had friendships that have done the same thing where we've gone through time. There have been periods where there wasn't necessarily a fallout, but we just stopped talking, or like maybe the last communication was a little tense. It was like a misunderstanding, not necessarily like a big fight, but it was like a misunderstanding. And then time had passed, and then one of us is brave enough to reach out and just kind of like test the water, you know. And sometimes you need to be able to have that humility to be able to say, you know, that thing that happened, can we talk about that? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what was that?
Because you kind of weigh it, right, in your mind, like especially if you're the one who reached out. If you're the one who reached out, it's because you had kind of had this conversation in your mind where is my pride worth more than their
Yeah.
friendship? Like when
Yeah.
you know, is
And
it more than how I wanted them to be in my life? You know?
Yeah, and it can be challenging to hold yourself accountable because sometimes we have to admit like when we're wrong. And like even me, I've struggled with that. But something that I always try to think in my mind is exactly what you just said, is being aware of how I affect other people. Like if I hurt you, I want to find a way to rectify that if it's possible. But it's being able to again let go of not having that pride of like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, it doesn't hurt to step back and look at the situation.
Okay, I feel like at that point you kind of waste the opportunity to reconnect, right? Because
Yeah.
like I saw someone talking on this before, where you know, like when you make excuses, when you try to justify, you're you're not fixing the problem. You're just you're putting what do you call it? You well, pardon the example that I'm gonna use, but they said you're putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. You know, it's
Yeah.
you know, it's not fixing, it's covering it up, but it's not fixing it. You know,
Yeah.
like when you try to justify, when you try to make excuses, you know, for like your behavior, like sometimes you just have to admit it. And like the reward that comes after that, right? When you're able to have that humility, like when we we're talking about earlier, like when you're able to have that humility, like God shows you like the good that brings, you
Yeah.
know, where like when I was able to reconnect with them, you know, like I was able to be friends with them again, like that felt like, you know, like what's the saying, like that felt like a thorn out of my side, you know, like that felt like
It's
a heavy,
heavy.
like
It
that felt
feels
like a weight
heavy.
off my shoulder. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I didn't even realize that I was carrying a weight on my shoulder for years until I was able to be friends with them. And like you, and not to be dramatic, but it did feel like, you know, like it, like when people say it was a weight off my shoulders, it's noticeable. You notice it. You know?
Yeah. Because it's sometimes you know you don't have to think about it, but you just know that something feels unsettled in you.
Mhm.
And that's why I go back to leaving the door open, because if you completely close it, then you lose the chance to gain that friendship back. And like, it doesn't mean that it will be easy. It
Mhm.
might require a lot of, working through the conversation or changes from both sides, depending on what was the reason for the fallout in the first place. But another thing that I've kind of um, really sat with lately, like within the last few years, is that, like what I mentioned earlier, friendships, they can be very easy to maintain, but they are hard to maintain. Like the actual work that you do to maintain friendships, to have a connection, I feel like it's not as hard. Like the maintenance that it takes, because you can ask a friend to go out and like just hanging out. You guys have fun together. That's why you're friends. Or
Mhm.
you can open up to each other and be able to share things with each other. It's not as demanding, I feel like, as other relationships, because there's certain responsibilities that you kind of give to everything else except for your friends in that way. But what
Mhm.
makes it challenging is because the natural occurrences of the proximity that Tracy was talking about, that's what makes it harder. So I really tried to work on giving people more grace and just being patient with people, because,
Mhm.
and this is true for anybody, not just your friends. Like you don't know what's going on the other side
Even for your
of that
friends. Yeah.
person. Yeah, like you only see one portion of their life. You
Mhm.
only see one portion of their life and what they're going through. And sometimes things happen. Like things will happen where you might disagree. Like I hope not, but sometimes when we're upset, our words, maybe we might say something that we regret, and we should of course avoid that. But being able to still, can you still exercise that forgiveness? Like, are you still willing to like extend and be able to, you know what I mean? It's not always super cut and dry to be able to just like, no, I don't want it anymore. Like it's really hard to do that, because like you said, for that reason, it weighs heavy on you. I think it weighs heavy on you, and it's not something that you want to carry, especially like as a Christian, like being able to care for people and to still love through the difficult things.
Like, and yeah, like, and what I said, like God shows you He shows you the goodness that comes from, like, like being humble enough to admit that, yeah, like I made some mistake. It's not that you're excusing, like, that you're
Mhm.
excusing how they've hurt you as well.
Yes.
Maybe let's say it's a particularly bad, like, fallout,
Hmm.
and it's not excusing that, but it's first admitting that, like, when you're able to admit, like, your mistake, you're able to, like, humble yourself, be the first one to humble yourself. It gives, like, what I notice is that it also can make the other person, like, reflect on, like, oh, like, yeah, they because you know how, like, when you're fighting, sometimes you're just kind of throwing, like, what you did wrong at each other.
Extremely, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're able to, like, you take it off their plate, and you admit that, yeah, like, this is, like, what I did wrong. It gives them time to reflect back, to stop thinking about what you did wrong, and then they kind of start thinking, oh wait, like, yeah, they admitted that, like,
Yeah.
wait, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
It gives them that opportunity as well. And when you're both able to, like, humble yourself, like that, yeah, the relief that comes from it, like, just this feeling, it's a different kind of, like, comfort then, right? Like, and it might go back to, like, like, where you might get used to that feeling, like, again. But
Yeah.
you always remember that reconnection, right? You remember that reconnection, and you remember, like what it taught you,
Mhm.
like. And this is not saying that if you do the right thing, then you're gonna be able to reconnect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the caveat here. Like
Mhm.
it's not something that's like an overnight thing. That's one thing that I want to stress before we close out the show, because there are plenty of different factors of why this stuff can happen. But
Mhm.
to like close an endpoint, you won't know the possibility of what could happen if you close the door.
Yeah.
Like, don't close the door. Like, leave it open. People can change, and like believing in the potential that people can change. And it's not that's not to say that you're going to things that are going to be okay like right away, depending on what happened. But leave the door open and allow people that chance to be forgiven and to rework things so that you could have a chance at that friendship again.
If it was you, you'd want it. You'd want to be forgiven as well. If it was, right?
Yeah. So hopefully for those who may be watching, who may have experienced a potentially expired relationship, leave the door open. You never know. Like, try to reach out, try to reconnect. Again, there's no guarantees, but you can pray about it, have your conversations with God, and then let him guide you where you need to go next. So thanks everyone for tuning in with us. Hopefully you've benefited from our show this evening. Take care, everyone, and continue to enjoy. Bye-bye.
Say